They said she was too weak to survive. Her own mate, the man who promised her forever, stood at the cliff's edge with murder in his eyes. Her best friend, the one who held her hand through every nightmare, smiled as the poison finally took hold. The storm screamed around them, rain slashing like knives, and Area Vale understood with perfect, terrible clarity. They'd been killing her for years, slowly, carefully, and tonight they would finish the job. But here's what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known. Some things refuse to die. If you want to see her rise from that river and become the nightmare they deserve, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I know you're watching, and hit that like button. You're going to need it for what comes next. The border cliffs had always terrified Arya. Even as a child, she'd avoided them, those jagged teeth of black stone that dropped 300 feet into the Thorn River below. The water there ran fast and mean, choked with broken trees and rocks sharp enough to split a wolf's skull. Pack elders told stories about the cliffs on winter nights, warnings dressed up as entertainment. Don't wander too close. The river takes what it wants and never gives it back. Tonight, standing at the very edge with rain hammering her face and wind trying to tear her off the rock, Arya finally understood why those stories existed. They weren't warnings, they were instructions. You don't have to do this. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted, swallowed almost immediately by the storm. Lightning cracked overhead, turning the world white for a heartbeat. In that flash, she saw them both clearly. Marcus with his jaw set like he was doing something noble, and Sarah with her arms crossed, looking bored. Please, we can talk about this. Whatever I did, what you did. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it, just something sharp and dismissive. You really don't get it, do you? Arya's legs shook. Not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from something deeper, something wrong. She'd felt it for weeks now, this creeping weakness that started in her bones and spread like frost through her blood. Some mornings she could barely stand. Other days, shifting into her wolf form felt like dragging herself through broken glass from the inside out. The pack healer said it was stress. Alpha training was hard on everyone, he'd explained with that patronizing smile. Her body just needed time to adjust. But this wasn't stress. This was poison. How long? She looked at Marcus, her mate, the man she was supposed to marry in 3 weeks, and watched his face stay perfectly blank. How long have you been doing this to me? Sarah stepped forward. Her best friend. The girl who'd slept in her room after Arya's parents died. Who'd held her hair back when grief made her sick. Who'd sworn on her wolf's life that they were sisters in everything but blood. Since we were 12, Sarah said, wolfsbane mixed with nightshade root, just enough to keep you manageable. You wouldn't believe how much you used to glow before we started. She tilted her head, studying Arya like she was a science project. Your eyes used to do this thing, this silver flash when you got angry, really unsettling, but the poison took care of that. The words didn't make sense. Arya shook her head, rain streaming into her eyes. 12? We were children. Why would you? Because you were always going to be a problem, Marcus said flatly. Your bloodline, your parents' legacy, the way the pack looked at you like you were something special, you know what you were supposed to become? Arya didn't answer. Couldn't. An alpha. He said it like a curse. Dominant bloodline. Ancient markers. The kind of wolf that shows up once in a generation and takes everything. His hand shot out, gripping her chin hard enough to bruise. But see, we couldn't let that happen. My family's been positioning me to lead since I was born. And then you showed up, all potential and prophecy, ready to ruin everything. So we fixed it, Sarah added. She sounded almost cheerful. Made you small, made you sick, made you manageable. And honestly, it worked perfectly. Look at you. You can barely stand up straight. It was true. Arya's vision kept blurring, and her heart was doing something arrhythmic in her chest. Every breath tasted metallic. Her wolf, usually a constant presence in the back of her mind, felt distant, muffled, like someone had wrapped it in layers of thick cloth. I trusted you. The words came out broken. Both of you, I loved you. I know, Marcus said. That's what made it so easy. He shoved her backward. Not hard. He didn't need to. Arya's legs were already giving out, her body shutting down from whatever they'd given her tonight. The The final dose, probably. The one meant to make sure she never woke up. She stumbled, arms windmilling, and for one suspended moment she thought she might catch herself. Then the ground disappeared. Falling felt different than she'd imagined. Not fast, at first, just a sickening drop in her stomach as the cliff face blurred past, rain and darkness mixing into something formless. She tried to scream, but the wind ripped it away. Tried to shift, but her wolf wouldn't respond, couldn't respond, not with poison flooding her system. The world spun. Sky became ground, became water, became nothing. Her back hit a rock outcropping halfway down. The impact drove all the air from her lungs, sent pain screaming through her spine. She bounced, tumbling, the cliff face a dark blur rushing past. Another impact, her shoulder this time, something tearing, popping, separating. Then the river. Water closed over her head, so cold it stopped her heart for a beat. The current grabbed her immediately, dragging her down and sideways, slamming her into rocks she couldn't see. Something cracked in her ribs. Her already damaged shoulder made a wet grinding sound that she felt more than heard. "Swim!" her brain screamed. "Fight! Move!" But her arms were dead weight. Her legs kicked weakly once, twice, then stopped. The poison had won. Whatever they'd given her was shutting everything down. Muscles, nerves, the desperate animal instinct to survive. The river pulled her under again. Water filled her mouth, her nose, her lungs. She tried to cough it out and inhaled more. Tried to find the surface and couldn't tell which way was up. The current rolled her like a piece of debris, smashing her into underwater rocks, dragging her through submerged branches that tore at her clothes and skin. Her vision started to dim, not from the darkness, from lack of oxygen. Her brain was shutting down, piece by piece, function by function. Somewhere far away, muffled and fading, she felt her wolf stirring. Not fighting, not trying to save them. Just sad. Sorry they'd never gotten to run together at full strength. Sorry they'd never found out what they were supposed to become. I'm sorry too, Arya thought. This time, when the river pulled her under, she didn't come up. Darkness swallowed her whole, and somewhere in that black freezing water, Arya Vale stopped fighting. She let go, and the river took her. Bashamamu, Mama. 3 hours later, 20 miles downstream. The first thing Kyle Virex noticed was the smell. Blood. Fresh but fading. Mixed with something chemical, bitter and wrong, like burnt herbs. His wolf stirred immediately, hackles raising even though he was still in human form. He'd been tracking a rogue pack through the borderlands for 2 days, following a trail of livestock kills and destroyed campsites. The rogues were smart, covering their tracks well, but not well enough. Kyle had found their last camp just after dawn, abandoned in a hurry, fire still smoldering, blood on the ground that didn't belong to any animal. Now, standing on the bank of the Thorn River with dawn just starting to break gray and cold over the mountains, he'd found something else entirely. A body. Or what was left of one. She was caught in a tangle of driftwood and river debris about 20 feet from shore, face down in the shallows, so still she might have been dead for days. Except the blood was fresh. And underneath the smell of the river, that green mineral scent of fast-moving water, Kale caught something that made him pause. Power. Not active, not even conscious, but there, buried deep under layers of corruption and poison. A spark that shouldn't exist in someone this broken. Should I pull her out? Jax, his second, stood a few feet back, expression carefully neutral. He was a big man, most of Kael's inner circle were, with red hair pulled back in a practical braid and scars marking his forearms. Or let the river finish the job. Kael didn't answer right away. He crouched at the water's edge, studying her, young, maybe early 20s, dark hair plastered to her skull. Skin so pale it was almost translucent, with that bluish tint that came from severe hypothermia. She wore what used to be decent clothes, travel gear, well-made leather, and good fabric. But they were shredded now, torn by rocks and current. 3 of her ribs were visible through a gash in her side. Her left arm bent at an angle that made Jax wince. One of her legs twisted wrong at the knee, and yet. Kyle reached out, pressing 2 fingers to the side of her throat just above the waterline. Pulse. Barely there. Weak and irregular. More flutter than beat, but present. She's alive, he said quietly. For now, Jax moved closer, peering at her face. But look at her, Alpha. Even if we pull her out, she's not going to make it. That's poison damage. See how her veins are showing dark around her temples? And her fingernails, that blue-black color? That's not river water. Someone's been feeding her something toxic for a long time. I know what it is. Then you know she's dead already. Just hasn't stopped breathing yet. Jax crossed his arms. We've got enough problems tracking these rogues. Don't need to add a dying girl to the list. Kale tilted his head, still watching her. His wolf was silent for once, not pushing, not demanding, just waiting, like it knew something he didn't. He'd learned to trust that feeling. It had kept him alive through 3 territory wars and more challenges than he could count. He slid his arms under her body and lifted her free of the water. She weighed almost nothing. Even accounting for her height, she was tall, maybe 5'8" or 5'9". She was too light. Like the poison had been eating her from the inside out, consuming muscle and fat and leaving just bones wrapped in skin. We're taking her, he said. Jax stared. Alpha, I didn't ask your opinion. Kale started walking, cradling the unconscious woman against his chest. Water streamed from her clothes, from her hair, leaving a trail in the dirt. Get a healer to the camp. The good one, not that herbalist who thinks prayer fixes everything. And find me someone who knows poisons. I want to know exactly what she's been dosed with and for how long. And if she doesn't survive the trip, then I'll bury her properly. He glanced down at her face, bruised, broken, half destroyed, but still breathing, however barely. But I don't think that's going to happen. Why not? Kyle didn't answer. Couldn't, really. How do you explain instinct? How do you tell your most trusted lieutenant that you just pulled a dying stranger from a river because your wolf, the predator that had killed rogue alphas and won territory wars, suddenly decided she was important? You don't. You just keep walking. The camp was 2 miles north, set up in a natural clearing with good sight lines and water access. Kyle had 20 wolves with him on this hunt, enough to handle the rogues when they found them, not so many that they couldn't move quickly. They'd been out here for 6 days now, following a trail that kept going cold and hot again. The rogues were hitting settlements along the border, small places, isolated, the kind nobody paid attention to until something went wrong. 3 dead in the last attack. A child missing in the one before that. Kale hated rogues, hated the chaos they brought, the fear, the way they made regular wolves look like monsters. But he hated the ones who targeted the vulnerable even more. These particular rogues were going to die screaming, but first apparently he was dealing with this. Mara, his head healer, took one look at the woman in his arms and her face went flat. No, she said. Yes. Kyle, I'm serious. Look at her. Mara was maybe 60, with gray streaking her dark hair and healer marks scarring her hands, decades of work with herbs and poisons and injuries that would have killed lesser wolves. She's got maybe an hour, 2 if we're lucky. I can't. You can. Kyle laid the woman down on the furs in the medical tent, careful despite the urgency. And you will, because I'm asking. Mara stared at him, then at the woman, then back at him. You never ask, she said slowly. You order, you demand, you threaten, but you don't ask. She crouched beside the woman, already checking pulse points, examining the visible injuries. Who is she? Don't know. Found her in the river. And you brought her here because she's not supposed to be dead yet. Kyle moved to the tent entrance. Do what you can. I want to know what she's been poisoned with and how bad it is. That'll take time, tests, maybe days if it's a complex mixture. Then get started. He left before Mara could argue further. Outside, the camp was starting to wake fully. Wolves emerging from tents, fire being built up, the smell of cooking meat beginning to drift through the clearing. Normal morning sounds. Routine. Except nothing about this morning felt routine. Jax appeared at his elbow. Scouts are ready to move. Want to continue the hunt? Kyle considered. The rogues were close. He could feel it. Maybe another day, 2 at most, before they caught up. But something about leaving the camp right now felt wrong. Double the perimeter guard, he said instead. Tell the scouts to run a wide circle, map any movement, but don't engage. We wait. For what? To see if she wakes up. Jax's eyebrows went up, but he didn't argue, just nodded and moved off to relay the orders. Kyle stood there for a moment, watching the camp come alive, listening to the sounds of his pack settling into another day. But his mind was elsewhere, on the woman in the medical tent, on the power he'd felt buried in her blood, on the fact that someone had gone through enormous trouble to make sure she died, and done it slowly, carefully, over what looked like years. You didn't poison someone like that unless you were terrified of what they'd become if you didn't, which meant whoever she was, whatever she'd been before the poison, it was worth finding out. 4 days later. Pain woke her. Not the dull, manageable kind Arya had gotten used to over the years. The constant ache in her joints, the chronic fatigue, the way her chest always felt tight like she couldn't quite get enough air. This was bright and sharp and everywhere, like someone had replaced her blood with ground glass and set it on fire. She tried to move and her body screamed in protest. Tried to open her eyes and the light stabbed straight into her skull like a physical thing. A sound escaped her throat, half gasp, half whimper. Someone's hand pressed against her shoulder, gentle but firm. Don't. A woman's voice, older, calm with the kind of authority that came from years of being obeyed. You've got 2 cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder that I had to reset twice, severe internal bruising, and enough poison in your system to drop a full-grown bull. Moving is a spectacularly bad idea. Arya forced her eyes open anyway. The light hurt less than she'd expected. Or maybe her pain tolerance had just been recalibrated by everything else that hurt. She was in a tent. Large one, well made, with thick furs on the ground and a small fire burning in a contained pit. The ceiling was high enough to stand in, the walls reinforced with wooden poles. Medical supplies lined one side, jars and pouches and tools she didn't recognize. The woman beside her was maybe 60, with gray streaking her dark hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Scars marked her hands, healer marks, the kind you got from working with sharp tools and dangerous herbs for decades. Where? Arya's voice came out like rust scraping over stone. She swallowed, tried again. Where am I? Virex territory, northern border camp. The healer held up a water skin supporting Arya's head with her other hand. Small sips. Your throat's raw from the river, and you haven't had water in 4 days. Arya drank. The water tasted like metal and herbs, medicine probably, but it helped. Cleared some of the fog from her brain. 4 days. She'd been unconscious for 4 days, which meant she wasn't dead. The realization hit her with unexpected force. She'd felt herself dying in that river, felt her brain shutting down, her lungs filling with water, her body giving up. She'd let go, but she was still here. Who brought me here? She asked. The Alpha King himself, actually. Found you half dead in the Thorn River about 20 miles from here. The healer's expression shifted into something complicated, part impressed, part concerned, part something else Arya couldn't identify. You're either very lucky or very cursed. Haven't decided which yet. The Alpha King. Arya's brain tried to process that. Kyle Virex, the most feared wolf in 3 territories. The man other alphas didn't challenge because challenging him was just elaborate suicide. Stories about him filtered through every pack. Some respectful, some terrified, all agreed on one thing. You didn't want his attention unless you were very strong or very stupid. Why would he? She stopped. Couldn't finish the question because she didn't have an answer that made sense. No idea. He doesn't explain himself. The healer started checking her bandages, hands efficient and practiced. But he's been very specific about your care. Wants you alive and conscious, which is the only reason you're not dead right now. I've been pulling poison out of your body for 4 days straight, and let me tell you, whoever dosed you knew exactly what they were doing. Arya closed her eyes. Sarah's face appeared in her mind, smiling as she handed over that cup of tea. Every morning for years. This'll help with the training aches, she'd said. And Arya had drunk it, trusted her. How bad is it? She asked quietly. Bad? Dwat the healer didn't sugarcoat it. Arya appreciated that. You've got wolfsbane, standard suppression poison, mixed with nightshade root, which targets nerve function. But there's also something I've never seen before, some kind of genetic suppressant that specifically blocks dominant bloodline markers. She paused, studying Arya's face. This wasn't just about making you weak. This was about making sure you never became what you were supposed to be, which is an alpha, a strong one, if the markers I'm seeing are accurate. Your blood has indicators I've only read about in old texts, ancient lines, dominant traits that should have manifested in your teens. The healer sat back. But the poison suppressed everything, your wolf, your strength, even your healing ability. You've been running on maybe 10% of your actual capacity for years. 10%. Arya lay there, staring at the tent ceiling, trying to process that. Everything she'd struggled with, the weakness, the exhaustion, the way shifting always felt wrong. It wasn't her fault, it was them. Marcus and Sarah and whoever else was in on it. They'd crippled her before she ever had a chance. Can you get it out? She asked. The poison? Maybe. Probably. The healer's expression went serious. But it's not going to be pleasant. The poison's been in your system so long it's integrated into your cells. Your body thinks it's supposed to be there. Purging it means essentially forcing your body to rebuild itself from the inside out, while fighting withdrawal symptoms and reactivating suppressed genetics all at once. What are my odds? Honestly, 30%. Maybe less if we hit complications. The healer met her eyes. And that's assuming you want to go through with it, because once I start the purification process, there's no stopping halfway. Your body won't let you. You either survive it or you don't. There's no middle ground. Arya thought about the cliff, about Marcus's hand on her chin, the contempt in his voice, about Sarah's cheerful explanation of how they'd poisoned her since childhood, about falling through darkness and cold water closing over her head. They'd tried to kill her, spent years making sure she'd never be strong enough to threaten them, and when that wasn't enough, they'd thrown her away like garbage. But she was still here, still breathing, and suddenly, with perfect clarity, Arya realized she wasn't done yet, not even close. When can we start? She asked. The healer smiled. It wasn't a nice smile, more like the expression someone makes before doing something difficult and necessary, and probably painful for everyone involved. Tomorrow, she said. Rest tonight. Eat if you can keep it down. Build up whatever strength you have left. She stood, gathering some of the medical supplies. Because once we begin, you're going to wish you'd died in that river. I'll check. They brought her food an hour later. Broth, mostly, with some kind of grain mixed in. It tasted like salted cardboard, but Arya forced it down anyway. Her stomach rebelled, tried to send it back up, but she kept swallowing until the bowl was empty. The healer, she'd introduced herself as Mara, had been right. She needed strength for whatever came next. A young woman appeared in the tent entrance after the meal, maybe 16 or 17, with curious eyes and a cautious smile. The Alpha wants to see you, she said. If you're strong enough to move. Arya wasn't strong enough to stand, let alone walk. But she nodded anyway. The girl helped her sit up, a process that took longer than it should have and hurt more than Arya wanted to admit. Then she produced a walking stick, something sturdy carved from oak. Lean on this, I'll help. Together, moving slowly, they made it out of the medical tent and into the camp proper. It was bigger than Arya had expected, maybe 20 tents arranged in a loose circle around a central fire pit. Wolves moved between them, some in human form, some shifted, all of them radiating the kind of controlled strength that came from serious training. This wasn't a regular patrol. This was an elite unit, and every single one of them stopped what they were doing to watch her pass. Not with hostility, just curiosity, like she was a puzzle they couldn't quite figure out. The Alpha's tent was at the far end of the camp, larger than the others, positioned with clear sight lines to every approach. Smart tactical thinking. The girl helped Arya inside, then retreated quickly. Kyle Virek stood with his back to the entrance, studying a map spread across a makeshift table. He was bigger than she'd expected, not just tall, though he was easily 6'4", but broad through the shoulders and chest. Built like violence wrapped in control. Dark hair, dark clothes, scars visible on his neck and hands. He didn't turn around immediately, just kept studying the map, one finger tracing what looked like patrol routes. "You're awake," he said finally. Not a question. "Apparently. Mara says you want to go through with the purification. She also said I'll probably die." She's being optimistic. Kyle turned then, and Arya got her first real look at him. Strong features, sharp jawline, eyes that were dark brown in the low light but probably went gold when his wolf was close to the surface. A face that had seen violence and dealt it back without hesitation. "I'd put your odds at 20%. Arya almost laughed. It hurt her ribs. "Why did you pull me out of the river?" Kale studied her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat, factual. "Because whoever threw you in went through a lot of trouble to make sure you died. Poisoned for years. Cliff in a storm. River running high." He moved closer, and Arya had to fight the urge to step back. Not from fear, from the sheer presence he carried. People don't work that hard to kill someone unless they're terrified of what that person might become. "I'm nobody," Arya said quietly. "You were nobody." His eyes, definitely going gold now, fixed on hers. "But there's something in your blood, something old and strong and deliberately buried. I can smell it under all the poison and damage." He tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a problem to solve. "Question is, do you want to find out what it is?" Arya's throat tightened. Did she want to know? Did she want to find out what she could have been if Sarah and Marcus hadn't spent a decade poisoning her? Did she want to become strong enough to go back and face them? The answer was immediate and absolute. Yes. "What happens if I survive?" she asked. "Then you train. You get strong. You learn how to fight, how to think, how to use whatever power's buried in you." Kyle said it like he was discussing the weather. "And when you're ready, you go back to whoever did this to you and you make them regret every single choice that led to that cliff." "You'd help me do that?" "I'd help you become capable of doing that." He moved back to his map. "What you do with that capability afterward is your business. But I don't save people just to watch them waste the second chance." He glanced back at her. "Mara starts tomorrow. If you survive the first week, we'll talk about what comes next. And if I don't survive, then I'll bury you properly, more than your pack would have done." It wasn't a comfort, but it was honest, and Arya found she preferred that to false promises. She turned to leave, leaning heavily on the walking stick, made it 2 steps before Kale spoke again. "One more thing." She looked back. "Whatever you were before, weak, scared, easy to hurt, that person's already dead." His expression didn't change. "The river killed her. What comes out of the purification is going to be something else entirely. Make sure you're ready for that." Arya nodded and left. Outside, the camp had returned to its routine. Wolves training, talking, preparing meals. Normal life continuing around her. But Arya didn't feel normal. Didn't feel like the person she'd been 4 days ago, standing on that cliff. That girl had trusted the wrong people. Had drunk poison for years without questioning it. Had believed in love and loyalty and all the things that turned out to be lies. That girl was dead. And Arya found she didn't mourn her at all. She made it back to the medical tent on her own, refusing help from the young wolf who tried to assist. Her body screamed with every step, but she kept moving, needed to know she could. Inside, she collapsed onto the furs and lay there breathing hard, ribs aching, shoulder throbbing, everything hurting. But underneath it all, buried beneath years of poison and betrayal and carefully constructed weakness, something started to wake up. Something angry. Something that remembered exactly who pushed her off that cliff and why. And for the first time in a decade, maybe for the first time ever, Arya felt her wolf stir. Not muffled or distant or suppressed, just there, present, furious. Good, she thought. Stay angry. Remember this feeling. Remember what they did to us. We're going to need it. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Tomorrow, the purification would begin. Tomorrow, she'd either die screaming or come out the other side as something new, something stronger, something that would make Marcus and Sarah wish they'd made sure the river finished the job. Arya closed her eyes and let the pain wash over her. Let it settle into her bones alongside the anger and the determination and the cold, clear certainty that she was done being weak, done being the victim, done being the girl they could throw away. Tomorrow, she'd start becoming the nightmare they'd tried so hard to prevent. And if she survived it, well, they were going to learn exactly why they should have made sure she stayed dead. The screaming started an hour before dawn. Mara had warned her it would be bad. She hadn't mentioned it would feel like dying from the inside out, while still conscious enough to experience every second of it. Arya's body convulsed on the furs, muscles locking and releasing in violent spasms she couldn't control. Sweat poured off her in sheets, despite the cold morning air. Her vision kept blurring, darkening at the edges, then snapping back into painful clarity. "Breathe through it," Mara said calmly, like Arya wasn't currently experiencing what felt like her organs liquefying. The healer held a bowl under her chin as another wave of nausea hit. "Your body's trying to purge 10 years of poison all at once. It's going to get worse before it gets better." "How much worse?" Arya managed between gasps. "You don't want to know." The next convulsion hit, and Arya's back arched off the ground, every muscle in her body going rigid. Something popped in her neck. The pain was so intense it whited out her vision completely for several seconds. When she could see again, Mara was checking her pulse, face professionally blank. Heart rate's elevated but steady. That's good. She reached for a clay jar, uncorked it, and the smell that emerged made Arya's stomach flip. "Drink this. It'll help your liver process the toxins faster." "What is it?" "Concentrated charcoal mixed with bloodroot, and something I'm not going to tell you about because you'll refuse to drink it." Arya drank it anyway. It tasted like dirt mixed with bile and something that might have been rotting meat. She gagged, fought to keep it down, succeeded through sheer stubbornness. "Good girl." Mara set the bowl aside. "Now comes the hard part." "That wasn't the hard part? That was your body starting to wake up. Now we have to keep it from killing you in the process." The next 3 days blurred into a continuous nightmare of pain, fever, and hallucinations Arya couldn't distinguish from reality. Sometimes she was back on the cliff with Marcus pushing her over and over in an endless loop. Sometimes she was 12 years old again, drinking tea Sarah handed her while smiling. Sometimes she was in the river, drowning, water filling her lungs while her wolf howled somewhere far away. She stopped being able to tell which memories were real. On the 4th day, the fever broke. Arya woke to find herself soaked in sweat, weak as a newborn, but clear-headed for the first time in 72 hours. The tent was empty, except for a water pitcher and clean clothes folded nearby. She sat up slowly, expected the usual wave of dizziness and nausea that had plagued her for years. It didn't come. Her body felt different. Lighter somehow, but also more solid, like someone had removed a layer of fog she hadn't known was there. She stood. Her legs shook but held. Walked to the tent entrance on her own. No walking stick, no support. Outside, the camp was in full morning activity. Wolves sparring in human form near the training area, others running perimeter in shifted form, the smell of cooking meat drifting from the fire pit, and every single one of them stopped what they were doing to stare at her. Arya felt their eyes like physical weight, not hostile, just assessing, measuring, trying to figure out if she was worth the resources they'd spent keeping her alive. Kyle emerged from his tent, took one look at her, and nodded once, like he'd expected this, like he'd known she wouldn't die. "You survived," he said. "Apparently. Mara says you're through the worst of it. Another week and the poison should be completely purged." He studied her with those gold-edged eyes. "How do you feel?" Arya considered the question. How did she feel? Weak, yes, exhausted, but underneath that, angry, she said honestly. Kale's mouth quirked, not quite a smile. "Good. Anger's useful if you know how to direct it." He gestured toward the training area. "You've got 2 hours to eat and rest. Then we start." "Start what?" "Seeing what you're actually capable of." He walked away before she could respond. Jax appeared at her elbow, the big red-headed second she'd seen that first day. He held out a bowl of stew and a piece of bread. "Eat," he said gruffly. "You look like a strong wind would snap you in half." Arya took the food. "Thanks. Don't thank me. Alpha's orders." But his expression softened slightly. "You got guts. I'll give you that. Most people would have quit after day 1 of purification. Most people probably have better survival instincts than me." Jack snorted. "Survival instinct is what keeps you breathing. Stubbornness is what makes you fight." He nodded toward Kyle's tent. "He sees something in you. Don't know what yet. But when the Alpha King takes a personal interest, you either rise to meet it or you get crushed trying. Which do you think I'll do?" "Ask me in a month." He left her there, holding the bowl of stew and wondering what exactly she'd agreed to. The answer came 2 hours later when Kael dragged her to the training grounds and proceeded to destroy every assumption she'd ever had about her own capabilities. "Shift," he said. Arya stared at him. "I can barely walk without getting winded. You want me to shift?" "I want to see what your wolf looks like without 10 years of poison suppressing it. So, yes, shift." She hadn't shifted in weeks. Even before the cliff, it had been getting harder. The poison making the transformation feel wrong, incomplete, like trying to fit into clothes that didn't belong to her anymore. But now, Arya reached for her wolf and felt it surge forward eagerly. No resistance, no muffled distance, just immediate, overwhelming presence. The shift hurt, bones breaking and reforming, muscles tearing and rebuilding, but it was a clean pain. Natural. Right. When she opened her eyes again, the world had changed. Colors shifted. Blues and violets more vivid, reds muted. Scents exploded into complexity. She could smell every wolf in the camp, distinguish between them, track their emotional states by scent alone. And her body... Arya looked down at herself and froze. She was bigger than she remembered, easily twice the size she'd been during her last shift. Her fur was dark, charcoal gray with silver highlights that caught the morning sun. But it was her paws that shocked her. They were massive, built for power rather than speed. Alpha paws. Around the training ground, the watching wolves had gone completely silent. Kael circled her slowly, expression unreadable. "Well," he said finally, "that's interesting." Arya shifted back to human form, the transformation smoother than it had ever been. Someone had left clothes nearby. She dressed quickly, trying to process what she'd just experienced. "I was never that big before," she said quietly. "Because you were being chemically castrated." Kael's voice was matter-of-fact. "Whoever designed your poison knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't just suppress your strength, they suppressed your wolf's development. You should have hit full alpha markers at 16. Instead, you've been locked at maybe 40% capacity for a decade. How much of my capacity am I at now? Maybe 60%. You're still recovering." He gestured to the sparring circle. "But we're going to fix that. Get in the ring." "You want me to fight?" "I want you to learn how. Big difference." The wolf who stepped into the ring across from her was young, maybe 19 or 20, with an easy confidence that spoke of serious training. He was also a good 6 inches taller than Arya, and probably outweighed her by 60 pounds. "Marcus," Kael said, and Arya's blood went cold at the name before she realized he was talking to the young wolf, not her former mate. "Standard drill, first blood or submission?" The young Marcus grinned. "Yes, Alpha." Arya barely had time to set her stance before he moved. He was fast, faster than she'd expected. His first strike came in high, aimed at her head. She ducked instinctively, felt his fist whistle past her ear, countered with a low jab that he blocked easily. They circled each other, trading blows. He was better trained, more experienced, fought with the kind of casual competence that came from years of practice. Arya fought like someone who'd been poisoned for a decade and was still figuring out what her body could actually do. She lasted maybe 90 seconds before he swept her legs and put her on her back, forearm against her throat in a submission hold. "Yield," he said, not unkindly. Arya tapped his arm twice. He released her immediately, helped her to her feet. "Not bad for someone who's been flat on her back for a week," he offered. Kael's voice cut through before Arya could respond. "Again." She looked at him. "What?" "You heard me. Again." The second round lasted 2 minutes, the third, maybe 2.5. By the fifth, Arya was bleeding from a split lip and her ribs were screaming, but she'd managed to land 3 solid hits and forced young Marcus to actually work for the takedown. "Enough," Kael said finally. Marcus, get some water. Arya, with me." She followed him to the edge of the training ground, breathing hard, tasting blood. "You fight scared," he said bluntly. "I fight like someone who's never actually trained." "No, you fight like someone who's been conditioned to lose." He turned to face her fully. "Every movement you make, you're pulling back, second-guessing, afraid of committing fully because part of you still believes you're weak." "I am weak, comparatively. Right now, yes. But weakness isn't the problem. Everyone starts weak. The problem is you're still fighting like a victim." His expression hardened, like someone who expects to get hurt and is just trying to minimize the damage. The words hit harder than any of young Marcus's punches. Because he was right. Arya had spent 10 years being told she was fragile, being protected, coddled, kept away from real training because her body supposedly couldn't handle it. And she'd believed it, internalized it, made it part of her identity. The weak one, the sick one, the one who needed to be careful. "So how do I fix it?" she asked. "You stop thinking and start moving. You commit to your strikes. You accept that you're going to get hit and hit back harder." Kale's eyes went gold. "And you remember that the people who made you believe you were weak are the same ones who tried to kill you, which means they knew exactly what you'd become if they didn't." Something shifted in Arya's chest. Not physical, mental. A lock clicking open that she hadn't known was there. "Again," Kyle said. This time when young Marcus came at her, Arya didn't pull back, didn't second guess. She met his strike with one of her own, committed fully to the movement even though it left her open to counter. He caught her in the ribs. She felt something crack, but her punch connected with his jaw, snapping his head sideways. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Young Marcus was grinning now, blood on his teeth. "There we go." They went 3 more rounds. Arya lost all of them, but each one lasted longer. Each one she landed more hits, each one she fought like someone who'd forgotten to be afraid. When Kyle finally called it, the sun was past noon and Arya could barely stand. "Better," was all he said. "Rest. We go again tomorrow." The pattern repeated for 3 weeks. Morning training with young Marcus or one of the other wolves. Afternoons learning tactics, strategy, how to read terrain and track movement. Evenings studying pack dynamics, territory law, the political structures that governed their world. And every night, alone in the medical tent, Arya felt her body changing. The poison was gone completely by day 10. Mara confirmed it with a blood test that came back clean, but the changes didn't stop there. Arya's muscles developed definition she'd never had before. Her reflexes sharpened. Her wolf grew stronger, clearer, more present in her mind. Sometimes she'd wake up and not remember if she'd dreamed in human form or wolf form because the line between them was blurring. The other wolves noticed. She caught them watching her during training sessions, whispering when they thought she couldn't hear. Not hostile, just uncertain, like they were trying to figure out where she fit in the hierarchy. The answer came on day 23. Arya was sparring with a female wolf named Cassie, older, experienced, built like a tank. They'd been at it for maybe 10 minutes when something in Arya snapped. Not broke. Snapped into place. Cassie came in with her standard combination, high strike, low sweep, grapple. Arya had seen it a dozen times, had fallen for it a dozen times. This time, her body moved before her brain could process it. She didn't just block the high strike, she redirected it, used Cassie's momentum against her, and suddenly the bigger woman was off balance. Arya's leg swept behind Cassie's knee at the exact moment she drove her palm into Cassie's chest. Cassie went down hard. The entire training ground went silent. Cassie looked up at Arya with wide eyes. Then, slowly, she tilted her head to the side, exposing her throat. Submission. Not to the move. To Arya. Kale was suddenly there, pulling Arya back before she could process what had just happened. "That's enough for today," he announced. His hand on her shoulder was firm but not rough. "Everyone back to your duties." The wolves dispersed, but Arya could feel their eyes on her as they moved away. Kyle steered her toward the edge of camp, away from listening ears. "What just happened?" Arya asked. "You forced a dominance response. Cassie's wolf recognized you as higher ranked and submitted accordingly." He studied her face. "How much of that was conscious?" "None of it. I just moved, and she was down." "Instinct. Your wolf's getting stronger, starting to assert itself." He paused. "Which means we need to accelerate your training." "Why?" "Because in another week, maybe 2, you're going to be strong enough that these practice sessions become dangerous. Your wolf will start seeing challenges where there aren't any, start pushing for dominance fights you're not ready to win." Arya's stomach dropped. "You're saying I'm going to become a problem." "I'm saying you're going to need better control, and the only way to get that is to push you harder than we've been pushing." His expression was serious. "This next part isn't going to be training. It's going to be survival. And if you're not ready, it'll break you. What if I am ready? Then you'll come out the other side as something nobody expects, including you. He turned to walk away, then paused. We leave at dawn, pack light. We'll be gone a week. Where are we going? Hunting. He didn't elaborate. Arya spent that night trying to sleep and failing. Her mind kept circling back to Cassie's submission, to the way her body had moved without conscious thought, to Kale's warning about what came next. She was stronger now, could feel it in every movement, every breath. The weakness that had defined her for so long was gone, burned away by poison purging and brutal training. But strength came with its own dangers. Her wolf wanted more, wanted to test itself, to prove what it could do. And part of Arya, the part that remembered Marcus's contempt and Sarah's smile, wanted to let it. Dawn came cold and gray. Kale was already packed, standing by the camp's north entrance with a travel bag slung over his shoulder. Just us? Arya asked, adjusting her own pack. Just us. Where we're going, numbers won't help. They left the camp behind and headed into the deep forest, the kind of old-growth wilderness where human feet rarely walked, and wolf law was the only law that mattered. Kale set a brutal pace, not running, but close to it, a ground-eating stride that ate up miles. Arya kept up, her new strength and endurance making the journey possible where it would have killed her a month ago. They didn't talk much. Kale seemed focused on something ahead, tracking scents and signs Arya couldn't detect yet. It was near sunset when he finally stopped, crouching to examine marks on a tree trunk. What is it? Arya asked. Claw marks, fresh, maybe 3 hours old. He stood, scanning the surrounding forest. We're close. Close to what? Your final test. Arya's wolf stirred uneasily. Test for what? To see if you can kill. The words hung in the air between them. Kale turned to face her fully. Everything up until now has been preparation, building your strength, your skill, your confidence. But there's a line between training and reality, between practice fights and actual survival. His eyes were pure gold now, his wolf very close to the surface. And you need to cross that line before we go any further. You want me to kill something. I want you to stop being prey. He gestured to the forest around them. There's a rogue wolf out here. Male, mid-30s, been terrorizing settlements for 2 months. Killed a child in his last attack. His voice went flat. He's yours. Arya's mouth went dry. You're giving me a hunt? I'm giving you a choice. Either you can hunt, or you're still the victim Marcus and Sarah created. Can't be both. What if I'm not ready? Then he'll probably kill you and I'll finish what you started. Kale's expression didn't change. But I don't think that's going to happen. Why not? Because you didn't survive that river just to die in these woods. You survived because part of you already knew what you were supposed to become. He started stripping off his shirt, preparing to shift. Now you just have to prove it. The rogue's scent hit Arya about 20 minutes later. Sour, wrong, tinged with old blood and madness. Her wolf recoiled instinctively, then pushed forward with sudden aggression. Threat, her wolf growled. Danger, wrong. Arya shifted without conscious thought, the transformation so smooth it barely registered. Her wolf form was even bigger than she remembered from the camp, easily 200 pounds of muscle and fury. Kale ran beside her in his shifted form, a massive black wolf that made Arya look small by comparison. But he hung back, letting her take point. This was her hunt. They found the rogue in a small clearing, feeding on what looked like a deer carcass. He was smaller than Arya expected, lanky rather than powerful, but the madness in his eyes was unmistakable. He looked up as they approached, blood matting his muzzle. Then he smiled, or did whatever passed for smiling in wolf form, and charged. Arya met him halfway. Their bodies collided with bone-jarring force. Teeth flashed, claws raked, blood sprayed hot across the cold ground. The rogue fought with the desperate violence of someone who had nothing left to lose. Arya fought with 10 years of rage finally given an outlet. He was faster than her, more experienced. Fought dirty, going for her eyes, her throat, weak points she barely managed to protect. But she was stronger, her jaws more powerful, her body heavier and built to dominate. When she finally got her teeth into his throat, Something primal surged through her. Not just her wolf, something deeper, older, a part of herself she'd never known existed. The rogue struggled, kicked, tried desperately to break free. Arya's jaws tightened, and she felt the exact moment his spine separated. The body went limp. She held on for another few seconds, making absolutely sure, then released. Blood covered her muzzle, her chest, her paws. The taste of it was copper and salt and something darker. She'd killed. Not in self-defense, not by accident, deliberately, consciously, with full intent. And she didn't feel guilty. She felt powerful. Kale approached in human form. He'd shifted back at some point during the fight. He crouched beside the rogue's body, checking for signs of life, finding none. "Clean kill," he said. "Quick. Effective." He stood looking at Arya with something that might have been approval. "You didn't hesitate." Arya shifted back to human, suddenly aware she was naked and covered in blood. Someone had left clothes at the edge of the clearing, Kyle's work probably. She dressed quickly. "Should I have?" she asked. "No, hesitation gets you killed." He started gathering wood for a fire. They'd need to burn the body, keep scavengers away. "How do you feel?" Arya considered the question. How did she feel? Not sick, not horrified, not guilty about taking a life. "Like I just passed a test I didn't know I was taking," she said finally. Kale's mouth quirked. "Because you did. That rogue was dangerous, yeah. But he wasn't the point. The point was seeing if you'd commit, if you'd cross that line from victim to predator." He got the fire started, flames catching on dry tinder. Most wolves who've been through what you have, they freeze when it matters. Too many years of being told they're weak. But I didn't. No, you didn't. He dragged the rogue's body toward the fire. "Which means we can move to the next phase." "What's the next phase?" "Teaching you how to think like an alpha instead of just fight like one." Kale added the body to the flames, stepped back as smoke began to rise. "Strength only matters if you know how to use it. Otherwise, you're just dangerous to yourself and everyone around you." They camped there that night, watching the fire burn down to embers. Kyle explained strategy, how to read pack dynamics, identify power structures, exploit weaknesses without direct confrontation. "Violence is easy," he said. "Any fool can throw a punch or tear out a throat. But real power, that comes from knowing when to fight and when to wait, when to push and when to let your enemy destroy themselves." "You're talking about politics." "I'm talking about survival at a level that matters. You want to go back to your old pack eventually, right? Face the people who tried to kill you?" Arya's jaw tightened. "Yes." "Then you need to understand something. Marcus didn't keep you weak just because he was cruel. He did it because he was scared. Scared of your bloodline, your potential, what you'd become if given the chance." Kyle poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the dark. "That fear is your weapon, not your claws, not your strength. Their fear." "How do I use fear as a weapon?" "By making them see what they created. By showing them that everything they did to suppress you only made you more dangerous." His eyes caught the firelight, turned molten. "By walking back into their lives when they think you're dead and watching them realize their worst nightmare just came true." Arya felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. Not rage. That was too hot, too unfocused. This was calculation, strategy, the beginning of a plan. "When can I go back?" she asked quietly. "When you're ready. When you can walk into that pack without your wolf demanding immediate violence. When you can smile at the people who poisoned you and make them wonder what you're planning." Kyle stood, stretching. "Another month? Maybe 2. Depends on how fast you learn." They returned to camp 3 days later. Arya walked in different than she'd left, could feel it in the way the other wolves reacted. Not wary anymore. Respectful. Like they recognized something in her that hadn't been there before. Young Marcus approached her that evening, grinning. "Heard you made your first kill. Rogue up north?" News travels fast. "Always does, especially when it's impressive." He sobered slightly. "How was it?" Arya thought about the rogue's eyes, the moment she'd felt his spine separate, the taste of blood. "Necessary," she said. He nodded like he understood exactly what she meant. Training intensified after that. Kael introduced her to advanced tactics, taught her how to read body language and scent markers, how to identify lies and manipulation. The physical training continued too, but now it included weapons, knives, staffs, learning how to fight when shifting wasn't an option. Arya absorbed it all like she was starving. Maybe she was. Starving for control, for power, for the ability to stand on her own without depending on anyone else's mercy. 6 weeks after the rogue hunt, Mara pulled her aside after a particularly brutal training session. "I need to check something," the healer said, already pulling out her testing kit. "Give me your arm." Arya complied, watched as Mara drew blood, mixed it with various reagents, studied the results. The healer's expression shifted into something complicated. "What is it?" Arya asked. "Your bloodline markers. They're not just active anymore. They're dominant, fully expressed." Mara looked up. "You know what that means? That the poison's completely gone? That and more. Your genetics are showing traits I've only read about in historical texts. Ancient alpha lines that were supposed to have died out centuries ago." She packed away her testing kit. "Whatever you were before the poison, it's nothing compared to what you're becoming now." Arya felt her wolf stir with something like satisfaction. "Is that a problem?" she asked. "Depends. For you? No. For anyone who underestimated you?" Mara smiled grimly. "They're going to wish they'd finished the job when they had the chance." That night, lying in her tent listening to the camp settle into sleep, Arya thought about Marcus and Sarah. Wondered if they ever thought about her. If they assumed she was dead, or if some part of them worried she'd survived. She hoped they worried. Hoped they lay awake at night wondering if that river had really finished what they started. Because in 2 months, maybe less, they were going to find out. And when they did, when she walked back into their lives with all the power they'd tried so hard to suppress, Arya smiled in the darkness. They were going to learn that some things, when you try to kill them, don't die. They just come back stronger, and so much angrier than you could possibly imagine. They just came back stronger, and so much angrier than you could possibly imagine. The message arrived on a cold morning exactly 8 weeks after the rogue hunt, a formal invitation delivered by a neutral courier who looked terrified to be in Virex territory at all. Kael read it twice, expression unreadable, then handed it to Arya. "The Summit of Territories," she read aloud. "All recognized alphas are invited to attend negotiations regarding border disputes and trade agreements." Her eyes caught on a name near the bottom of the page. Marcus Vale, Alpha of the Shadowpine Pack. Her hand didn't shake. That surprised her. She'd expected rage, maybe fear, definitely something visceral at seeing his name written out like he had every right to claim her family's legacy. Instead, she felt nothing, just cold, clear calculation. "You took your pack name," Kael observed. "Bold move for someone who married in." "My father was the Alpha. When he died, leadership should have passed to my mother, then to me." Arya set the invitation down carefully. "But they killed her too, didn't they? Made it look like an accident." "Oh, probably. Poisoning you wouldn't make sense unless they'd already secured the succession." Kael leaned back in his chair. "Question is, what do you want to do about it?" Arya looked at him. "You're going to this summit?" "Required attendance. Every alpha in 3 territories will be there. Politics, territory negotiation, the usual posturing." His eyes glinted. "But it's also neutral ground. No violence permitted under summit law, which makes it the perfect place to destroy someone without laying a finger on them. You want me to go? I want you to decide if you're ready. Because once we walk in there together, once they see you alive, there's no going back. Marcus and Sarah will know you survived. Their entire pack will know, and they'll spend every second after that trying to figure out how to finish what they started." Arya thought about the cliff, the river. Weeks of agony as poison burned out of her system. Months of brutal training that left her bloody and exhausted and stronger than she'd ever imagined possible. She thought about her parents, dead before she was old enough to understand why. About 10 years of carefully administered poison disguised as care. About Marcus's hand on her face, Sarah's cheerful confession, the feeling of falling through darkness. "I'm ready," she said. Kale smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then let's go introduce the dead girl to her grieving widower. They left 2 days later with an escort of 12 wolves, enough to project strength without appearing aggressive. Arya rode beside Kyle at the front, hyper-aware of the stares from passing travelers as they made their way south toward the summit grounds. News traveled fast in their world. By the second day, word had spread that the Alpha King was traveling with an unknown female wolf. Speculation ran wild. A new mate, a political alliance, a secret daughter nobody knew about. Nobody guessed the truth. Why would they? Arya Vale was dead. Everyone knew it. Marcus had held a memorial service 3 months ago, played the devastated fiancé perfectly. The pack had mourned their lost daughter. Case closed. Except Arya was very much alive, riding through territory that had once been hers, wearing clothes that marked her as Virex pack, and planning exactly how to destroy the people who'd tried to erase her. "You're smiling," Jax observed, riding up beside her. "That's either really good or really bad. Can it be both? With you? Probably." He studied her face. "You know they're going to lose their minds when they see you. That's the idea." "And then what? You can't challenge for your pack at a summit. Law forbids it." "I don't need to challenge. I just need to plant seeds." Arya glanced at him. "Fear grows fast when you water it right," Jax laughed. "You've been spending too much time with the Alpha. Starting to sound like him. Is that a compliment? Depends on whether you survive what comes next." The summit grounds were impressive. A massive clearing in neutral territory with temporary structures set up to house the various packs. Central pavilion for negotiations. Smaller tents radiating outward. Designated areas for each Alpha and their entourage. They arrived at sunset, the golden light painting everything in shades of amber and shadow. Wolves were already gathering, territories staking their claims, the air thick with competing scents and barely concealed tension. Arya felt every eye turn toward them as they entered. She'd changed her appearance deliberately, cut her hair shorter, dyed it slightly darker, wore clothes that emphasized the muscle she'd built over the past months. But her face was the same. Her eyes were the same. Anyone who'd known her before would recognize her with enough attention. The question was whether anyone would be looking. Kale dismounted, offered his hand to help Arya down, even though she didn't need it. The gesture was deliberate, a public claim that she was under his protection, pack politics made visible. "Stay close," he murmured. "Let them wonder. We'll make the reveal on our terms." They moved through the crowd toward the Virex-designated area. Arya kept her head up, her expression neutral, watching wolves who'd known her entire life walk past without a flicker of recognition. 10 years of poison had made her forgettable, weak, easy to overlook. Nobody was overlooking her now. "Alpha Virex," a smooth voice cut through the crowd. "Always a pleasure." Arya turned and felt her heart slam against her ribs. Sarah. Her former best friend stood 20 feet away, dressed in formal pack regalia, a silver pin marking her as beta female. She looked exactly the same. Beautiful, confident, completely at ease. She was staring directly at Arya without a hint of recognition. "Beta Sarah," Kale acknowledged coolly. "Your Alpha sent you to greet us personally? Marcus wanted to ensure you received proper welcome." Sarah's smile was practiced, political. "And to introduce his mate officially. We married last month." The words should have hurt. Probably would have hurt the old Arya, the one who'd loved Marcus, trusted Sarah, believed in loyalty and friendship. This Arya felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Congratulations," Kyle said. "I wasn't aware the mourning period was over." Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "Mourning period? For your pack's lost daughter. Arya Vale, wasn't it? Tragic accident, I heard." "Oh, yes." Sarah's expression shifted into something practiced, sadness that didn't reach her eyes. "Very tragic. She was fragile. The storm that night, the cliffs." She shook her head. "We searched for weeks. Never found the body." "Rivers don't give up their dead easily," Arya said quietly. Sarah's gaze snapped to her, really looking for the first time. Arya watched recognition struggle to surface, saw the exact moment confusion crossed Sarah's face. "I'm sorry," Sarah said slowly. "Have we met?" "Not formally." Arya extended her hand. "Arya, I'm with the Virex pack." She watched Sarah's brain work, watched her dismiss the similarity as coincidence. Same name, sure, but this woman was taller, stronger, radiating confidence, nothing like the weak, sickly girl she'd helped poison for a decade. Sarah shook her hand. Unusual name. My condolences on your loss. Loss? Your family. The Vales were a good bloodline. Sarah's tone was perfectly sympathetic. Such a shame about the daughter. Arya smiled. Let it reach her eyes this time. Yes. Such a shame she was too weak to survive. Something flickered in Sarah's expression, too quick to identify. Then it was gone, replaced by political friendliness. If you'll excuse me, I should return to my alpha. We have preparations for tonight's opening session. She nodded to Kyle. Alpha Virex. She walked away, her scent carrying undertones of confusion and something else, something that might have been unease. She didn't recognize you, Jack said quietly from behind them. No. Arya watched Sarah disappear into the crowd. But she's wondering. That's enough for now. The opening session was held in the central pavilion after sunset. All the alphas gathered, their betas and key pack members arranged behind them. The air was thick with power and barely controlled aggression. 30 different packs in one space, all with competing interests and old grudges. Arya stood behind Kael's right shoulder, positioned as part of his inner circle. From here she had a clear view of the entire gathering, and a direct line of sight to Marcus. He sat 3 tables over, looking every inch the confident alpha. Older than she remembered, not in years, just in bearing. More weight on his shoulders, more calculation in his eyes. Sarah sat beside him, whispering something that made him nod. Arya studied him dispassionately. This was the man she'd loved, the man she'd planned to marry, the man who'd pushed her off a cliff without hesitation. Looking at him now, she tried to find some remnant of old feelings. Tried to feel hurt or betrayed or anything personal. But all she felt was strategy. He was in her way, that was all, an obstacle to be removed. The summit leader, a neutral elder named Grandmother Thrace, called the session to order. Started with formal introductions, territory acknowledgments, the usual political theater. Arya barely listened. She was too focused on watching Marcus and Sarah, cataloging their reactions, their body language, the way they interacted with other pack leaders. Marcus was playing the part well. Sympathetic young alpha dealing with tragedy, doing his best to hold his inherited pack together. Several older alphas nodded approvingly when he spoke about maintaining tradition, honoring the Vale legacy. It was a good performance. Arya was going to enjoy destroying it. And we acknowledge the presence of Alpha Kael Virex, Grandmother Thrace announced. King of the Northern Territories, guardian of the borderlands. Kael stood, didn't speak, just nodded acknowledgement. He didn't need to perform. Everyone knew exactly who he was and what challenging him would cost. He sat back down, and Arya felt his hand brush her wrist, a subtle signal. Now. She stood. Every eye in the pavilion turned to her. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Only alphas and designated speakers were supposed to stand during introductions. Forgive the interruption, Arya said clearly, but I have a question for Alpha Marcus Vale. The pavilion went dead silent. Marcus's face remained composed, but Arya saw his jaw tighten. I don't believe we've been introduced. No? That's strange. Arya stepped forward, moving into the light. We were engaged once. You don't remember? The confusion in the room shifted to shock. Marcus stood slowly. His face had gone carefully blank, but Arya could smell his fear now, sharp and accurate under the practiced calm. I think you're mistaken, he said evenly. My fiancée died 3 months ago. Did she? Arya moved closer, letting the light hit her face fully. Let him see. Let everyone see. Because I'm standing right here, the pavilion erupted. Wolves surged to their feet, voices rising in confusion and accusation and disbelief. Grandmother Thrace banged her staff against the floor, demanding order, but nobody was listening. All eyes were on Arya and Marcus. Sarah had gone white. Actually white, like someone had drained all the blood from her face. Marcus recovered faster. I don't know who you are or what game you're playing, but my fiancé was poisoned for 10 years with wolfsbane and nightshade, root mixed with a genetic suppressant. Arya's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. was pushed off the border cliffs during a storm, was left to die in the Thorn River. She smiled, and it was all teeth. But she didn't die. Did she, Marcus? This is insane. Marcus looked around the room, appealing to the other alphas. I don't know this woman. She's clearly disturbed. Sent me, Arya said simply. That shut him up. Scent didn't lie. Couldn't lie. Every wolf had a unique signature that identified them as clearly as a fingerprint, and while appearance could be altered, scent couldn't. Grandmother Thrace moved forward, leaning heavily on her staff. An unusual request, but a fair one. She looked at Marcus. Unless you object? Marcus couldn't object, not without looking guilty. He approached Arya slowly, stopped just within scenting distance. She watched his nostrils flare, watched him process what he was smelling, watched the exact moment recognition and horror crossed his face. Impossible, he whispered. And yet, Arya tilted her head. Here I am. The pavilion had gone silent again, every wolf watching, waiting. Grandmother Thrace stepped between them. Alpha Marcus. Is this woman Arya Vale? Marcus's mouth opened, closed. His scent was pure panic now. She was dead, he said, finally. Not a denial. The fall, the river, the poison. She shouldn't have survived. Wrong answer. The pavilion erupted again, but this time with fury instead of confusion, because Marcus had just admitted 3 things: that this was Arya Vale, that she'd been poisoned, and that he knew about the fall. Order! Grandmother Thrace's voice cracked like thunder. The room fell silent. We will address this properly. Alpha Virex, you brought this woman here? Kale stood calm as still water. I found her half dead in the Thorn River 2 months ago. Pulled her out. My healer confirmed 10 years of systematic poisoning. She's been recovering in my territory ever since. And you chose to reveal this now? At a summit? Neutral ground seemed appropriate, given that someone clearly wanted her dead and might try again if she returned to her home pack without protection. Grandmother Thrace's ancient eyes narrowed. She looked at Marcus, then Sarah, then back to Arya. Arya Vale, do you accuse Alpha Marcus of attempting to murder you? This was the moment, the point of no return. Arya could feel the weight of every wolf in the pavilion, waiting for her answer. Could smell Marcus's fear, Sarah's panic, Kael's controlled anticipation. She thought about her parents, about 10 years of poison, about falling through darkness with the taste of betrayal in her mouth. Yes, she said clearly. I accuse Marcus Vale and Sarah Blackwood of systematic poisoning, conspiracy to commit murder, and unlawful seizure of pack leadership. The chaos that erupted made the previous outbursts look calm. Marcus was shouting denials, his wolves surging forward in defense. Other alphas were demanding explanations, evidence, calling for blood tests and formal investigations. Sarah had disappeared into the crowd. Smart move, probably. Grandmother Thrace banged her staff repeatedly, but nobody was listening anymore. Kael appeared at Arya's shoulder, his hand firm on her elbow. Time to go, now. But you made your play. Let it work. Staying here just gives them a chance to organize. He was right. Arya let him steer her toward the exit, Jax and the other Virex wolves forming a protective circle around them. Behind them, she heard Marcus shouting something about lies, about proof, about how convenient it was that she'd appeared with the Alpha King backing her claims. Let him shout, let him panic. The seeds were planted now. Fear would do the rest. They made it back to the Virex camp before the first assassination attempt. 3 wolves came out of the darkness, moving fast and coordinated. Not Marcus's pack. These were hired hands, rogues paid to finish what the river hadn't. They died before they got within 10 feet of Arya. Kael didn't even shift, just moved with brutal efficiency, snapping necks and breaking spines like it was routine, which, for him, it probably was. Well, Jax observed, checking the bodies for identification marks. That answers the question of whether they'll try again. We need to leave, Kael said. Tonight. Before they organize something more serious. No. Arya's voice was firm. We stay. Kael turned to look at her. They just tried to kill you. And they'll try again. But if I run now, it proves I'm scared. Proves they still have power over me. She met his eyes. I didn't come here to hide. I came here to make them see what they created. You came here to plant seeds. Mission accomplished. Now we extract before what? Before I actually claim what's mine." Arya's wolf surged forward, lending edge to her voice. "That's my pack, Kael. My family's legacy. My territory. And I'm not leaving until everyone here knows that Marcus is sitting in a stolen chair." Kael studied her face for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right. But we do this smart. No more public confrontations. We work the politics, turn the other alphas against him, make his position untenable." He glanced at the dead assassins. "And we triple the guard rotation. These won't be the last." He was right. Over the next 3 days, there were 6 more attempts on Arya's life. Poisoned food. Ambush during a morning run. An accidental tent fire that would have killed her if Jax hadn't been on watch. Each time, they stopped it. Each time, Arya made sure word spread about who was behind it. And each time, Marcus's support among the other alphas eroded a little more. It helped that Arya had evidence now. Mara had traveled to the summit with detailed records of the poison she'd purged from Arya's system. Medical documentation that matched perfectly with symptoms Arya had exhibited for years. Testimony from pack members who remembered young Arya always being sick, always weak, always drinking special tea that Sarah prepared. Small details that individually meant nothing. Together, they painted a damning picture. By day 4, half the alphas at the summit were openly questioning Marcus's legitimacy. By day 5, formal challenges were being discussed. That's when Sarah made her move. Arya was alone. Stupid mistake, she'd know better later, heading back to her tent after a late meeting with some of the neutral alphas. The path was well lit, well traveled, right up until Sarah stepped out of the shadows with a knife. "You should have stayed dead," Sarah said conversationally. Arya stopped, assessing. Sarah was armed, positioned between Arya and help, clearly desperate enough to break summit law against violence. "Probably," Arya agreed. "But I'm stubborn that way. This is your fault. All of it." Sarah's hand shook slightly on the knife. "We gave you everything. Love, friendship, a place in the pack. And you couldn't just be satisfied with that. You had to be special, had to have that bloodline, that power, that destiny. So you poisoned me. So we made you manageable." Sarah's voice cracked. "You don't understand what it was like, watching you glow with potential we'd never have. Watching the pack look at you like you were something precious while we worked twice as hard for half the recognition." She stepped closer. "We earned our positions. You were just born into yours." Arya felt something almost like pity. Almost. "And now?" she asked quietly. "Now what? You kill me here, break summit law, prove everything I've accused you of? Now I finish what Marcus was too weak to do properly." Sarah lunged. Arya could have dodged, could have blocked, disarmed, disabled. She did none of those things. Instead, she caught Sarah's wrist mid-strike, twisted hard enough to shatter bone, and watched the knife fall harmlessly to the ground. Sarah screamed. Arya shifted her grip, forced Sarah to her knees, leaned in close enough to whisper. "You made me what I am," she said softly. "Every dose of poison, every lie, every year you spent trying to kill me slowly. You created this." She released Sarah's broken wrist, stepped back. "So thank you. Really, I couldn't have done it without you." She walked away, leaving Sarah sobbing in the dirt. Guards appeared within seconds. They'd been watching from a distance, letting the confrontation play out. They took Sarah into custody, confiscated the knife as evidence. By morning, the entire summit knew what had happened. Marcus tried to spin it, claimed Sarah had acted alone, that he'd known nothing about the poisoning or the attack. Played the devastated husband discovering his wife's betrayal. Nobody believed him. The vote came on day 6. Formal assembly, all alphas present, testimony heard from both sides. Grandmother Thrace stood at the center, ancient and implacable as stone. The evidence presented suggests systematic conspiracy to commit murder, unlawful seizure of pack leadership, and violation of succession law. Her voice carried across the pavilion. "Alpha Marcus Vale, how do you answer these charges?" Marcus stood. He looked tired now, cornered, but still fighting. "I deny all accusations. Arya Vale abandoned her pack, failed her duties, and died through her own weakness. I stepped in to prevent chaos, married into the bloodline as was my right, and have led Shadowpine faithfully for 3 months. And the poison, the medical evidence? Fabricated or misinterpreted. She was always sickly. That's not the same as being poisoned. Grandmother Thrace looked at Arya. What say you? Arya stood slowly. She'd prepared for this, rehearsed it with Kael a dozen times. I say that truth doesn't require belief to exist. The poison was real. The assassination attempt was real. My survival is real. She looked directly at Marcus. And my claim to Shadowpine Pack is real. Blood claim, birthright claim. The claim my father held and my mother after him. No marriage, no political maneuvering, no convenient death can erase that. You challenge for leadership? I reclaim what was already mine. The pavilion went silent. Blood challenges were rare, dangerous, usually fatal for at least one party. But they were also absolute, the most ancient law in their culture. Marcus's face had gone white. You can't be serious. You tried to kill me because you were afraid I'd become something you couldn't control. Arya's wolf pushed forward, lending power to her voice. Turns out you were right to be afraid. But killing me would have been kinder, because now I'm going to take everything you stole and make you watch. I accept, a voice said. Not Marcus. He was still standing there, frozen. The voice came from behind Arya. She turned. Kael had stood, his expression unreadable. I accept on behalf of Shadowpine Pack, he said clearly. As Alpha King and Guardian of Territorial Law, I invoke ancient right of intervention. Marcus Vale's claim is forfeit. The pack reverts to its rightful bloodline. Silence. Then Marcus lunged, not at Arya, at Kael, claws extended, teeth bared, the desperate violence of someone with nothing left to lose. He made it 3 steps before Kael moved. It was over in seconds. One strike, perfectly placed, and Marcus was on the ground with Kael's hand around his throat. Yield, Kael said quietly. Marcus made a choking sound that might have been agreement. Kael released him, stepped back, turned to face Grandmother Thrace. The challenge is satisfied. Shadowpine Pack returns to Vale bloodline leadership. Any disputes can be filed through proper channels. Grandmother Thrace looked like she'd bitten into something sour, but she nodded. So witnessed, so recorded. She banged her staff. This assembly is concluded. The pavilion erupted in noise and movement. Wolves pressing forward, shouting questions, demanding details. Arya stood in the center of it all, numb. She'd won. Shadowpine was hers. Marcus was disgraced. Sarah was in custody. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd suffered for, delivered in a single moment. So why did it feel hollow? Kael appeared at her side, steady as stone. We need to go, now, before Marcus's supporters organize. They'll come for me. Yes, but not tonight. Tonight we get you back to Virex territory where I can protect you properly. He paused. Unless you want to claim Shadowpine immediately? Arya thought about her old pack, the territory she'd grown up in, the wolves who'd watched her be poisoned for years and done nothing. No, she said quietly. Let them wait. Let them wonder. I'll come back when I'm ready. They left the summit that night, riding hard through darkness with a full escort. Behind them, Arya could feel the weight of what she'd done, what she'd set in motion. She'd exposed Marcus and Sarah, reclaimed her bloodline rights, stood in front of 30 packs and declared herself alive. But she'd also painted a target on her back that would never fully disappear, made enemies who would spend the rest of their lives trying to finish what the cliff and river had started. Somewhere in the darkness behind them, Marcus was plotting revenge. Sarah was locked up but not broken, and Shadowpine Pack was leaderless, vulnerable, waiting for someone to claim it. The war was just beginning, and Arya had no idea if she was strong enough to survive what came next. The answer came 3 days later when Marcus's supporters burned down the eastern border settlement. Arya stood in the ashes at dawn, breathing smoke and death, watching families dig through rubble for belongings that no longer existed. 12 buildings gone, 23 wolves displaced, 2 children still missing. The message had been carved into the town square stone. False alpha brings false protection. They're testing you. Kyle said quietly beside her, seeing if you'll respond with violence or weakness. What's the right answer? Neither. You respond with strength that doesn't need violence to prove itself. He nodded toward the families picking through debris. Help them rebuild. Show them what real leadership looks like. And if Marcus attacks again while we're playing construction crew, then we make sure he regrets it. Arya spent the next week in that settlement, not directing from a distance, actually working, hauling lumber, clearing rubble, helping families sort through what could be salvaged. Her hands blistered, her back ached, and every night she collapsed into exhausted sleep. But the families noticed, started looking at her differently. Not with the fearful respect they showed Kyle, but something warmer, like maybe she was actually one of them instead of just another alpha playing political games. On the 8th day, a delegation arrived from Shadowpine. 5 wolves, all older pack members Arya vaguely recognized from her childhood. They approached cautiously, clearly expecting guards to stop them. Arya was hauling timber when they arrived. She set down the beam, wiped sweat from her face, and waited. The eldest, a gray-haired man named Thomas, who'd been her father's friend, stepped forward. Arya Vale. He didn't bow, didn't show submission, just studied her face like he was looking for someone he used to know. You're alive. Apparently. Marcus said you ran away. Said you were too weak for alpha duties, that you abandoned the pack. Marcus lied about a lot of things. Thomas's jaw worked. The pack is fractured. Half support his claim through marriage law. Half want the bloodline restored. He paused. And some of us want to know why you waited 3 months to come back. Fair question. Hard question. Arya looked at the settlement around them, the families rebuilding, the children playing in the ruins, the community pulling together because they had no other choice. Because I wasn't ready, she said honestly. Marcus was right about one thing. I was weak, too sick, too trusting, too easy to kill. Coming back then would have just gotten me dead again. And now? Now I'm strong enough to take back what's mine. Question is whether the pack wants me to. The delegation exchanged glances, some kind of silent communication Arya couldn't read. Marcus has been difficult, another wolf said carefully. A woman, maybe 50, with healer marks on her hands. Aggressive, paranoid. He's doubled patrols, restricted movement, started accusing long-standing members of disloyalty. He's scared, Arya said. Scared I'll come back. Scared the pack will turn on him. So he's trying to control everything before it all falls apart. Will you come back? Yes, but not yet. Arya gestured to the settlement. These wolves lost everything because Marcus's supporters wanted to send me a message. I'm not leaving them to rebuild alone while I go play politics. Thomas's expression shifted into something that might have been approval. Your father would have done the same. The words hit harder than Arya expected. She'd barely known her father. He'd died when she was 8, her mother a year later. But the few memories she had were of a man who put pack welfare above everything else. Tell the pack I'm coming, she said. 2 weeks, maybe 3. When this settlement is rebuilt and these families are safe. She met Thomas's eyes. And tell them I'm not coming to ask permission. I'm coming to take what was stolen from my family. The delegation left. Word spread fast. Over the next 10 days, more Shadowpine wolves started appearing. Not officially, just individuals who happened to be passing through, who stopped to help with construction, who stayed for meals and quiet conversations about what leadership should look like. Arya didn't recruit them, didn't make promises or political speeches. She just worked alongside them, listened when they talked about pack problems, made decisions about resource allocation and security without consulting anyone because the decisions needed making and she was there. Leadership by doing instead of declaring. On day 12, the children were found. 2 scouts discovered them in a cave system 5 miles north, cold and hungry, but alive. They'd hidden during the attack, gotten turned around in the tunnels, couldn't find their way back. When they were brought to the settlement, their mother collapsed in relief. The whole community gathered around, celebrating, crying, thanking every power they could think of. Arya stood at the edge of the crowd, watching, feeling something tight in her chest that she couldn't name. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not revenge, though that was part of it. Not power, though she'd need that too. This, People safe, families together, a community that worked because everyone contributed instead of just following orders. "You're thinking too loud," Jax observed, appearing beside her. "I can hear your brain working from across the camp." "I'm thinking this is more complicated than I expected. Leadership usually is." He crossed his arms. "But you're doing better than most, actually listening instead of just ordering people around. Kael orders people around all the time. Kael's the Alpha King. He's earned the right to order people around. You're still proving yourself." Jax glanced at her. "But the fact that you know that puts you ahead of Marcus already." The attack came that night, not on the settlement. Kael had that too well protected. On the supply caravan bringing materials for the final phase of reconstruction. 10 wolves, all Marcus's loyalists, armed and coordinated. They hit the caravan at the narrow pass where guards were spread thin, killed the drivers, and burned everything. 2 weeks of work, gone. Arya got the news just after midnight, rode out with Jax and 6 others to assess the damage, already knowing what she'd find. The caravan was still smoldering when they arrived. Bodies sprawled in the dirt, good wolves who'd just been doing their jobs. Supplies scattered and ruined, and carved into the lead wagon. "Come home, little Alpha. Let's finish this properly." "He wants you angry," Jax said. "Wants you to come charging in without thinking, easy to kill." "I know what he wants." Arya's voice was flat. "Question is what I'm going to give him." She spent the ride back planning. Not revenge. That was too emotional, too easy to screw up. Strategy. How to remove Marcus without triggering a civil war that would destroy the pack. By the time they reached the settlement, she had the beginnings of a solution. It was completely insane, probably suicidal, and absolutely necessary. "I'm going to Shadowpine," she announced to Kael the next morning. "Alone." He stared at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon. "Absolutely not. It's the only move that makes sense. Marcus is baiting me, trying to force a violent confrontation he thinks he can win. But what he actually wants is to kill me in front of witnesses so it looks legitimate. Which is exactly why you're not going alone. If I show up with an army, it's an invasion. The pack will defend Marcus even if they don't like him because that's pack law." Arya leaned forward. "But if I walk in alone, unarmed, and demand a formal hearing under pack law, he can't refuse without looking like a coward. He'll kill you the second you cross the border." "Maybe. Or maybe he'll see an opportunity to humiliate me publicly and take it." She met Kael's eyes. "I'm betting on his ego being bigger than his common sense." Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then, "This is a terrible plan." "You have a better one?" "Yes. We gather allies, build a coalition, force Marcus out through political pressure." "That'll take months. How many more wolves die while we're playing politics?" Arya shook her head. "No. I end this now on my terms." "And if you're wrong? If he just kills you?" "Then you finish what I started. Take Shadowpine by force if you have to. Make sure Marcus doesn't get to enjoy his victory." She could see Kael working through scenarios, calculating odds, hating every option. "One compromise," he said finally. "You go in alone, but I position forces at the border, close enough to intervene if things go sideways. Close enough that Marcus can claim I brought an army? Close enough that you don't die stupidly." His expression was hard. "Take it, or I'll lock you in this camp until you see reason." Arya smiled despite herself. "You could try." "Yes, I could. And I'd succeed because you're good, but I'm better." He stood. "So, do we have an agreement?" She should argue, should push for complete independence, but Kael was right. Walking in completely alone was brave in theory, stupid in practice. "Agreement," she said. They left 3 days later. Arya rode in front, alone and unarmed as promised. Kael's forces followed at a distance, close enough to respond, far enough not to be seen as an invasion force. The Shadowpine border was marked by ancient stones her great-grandfather had placed generations ago. Crossing them felt like stepping into a memory, familiar and alien at once. Guards materialized from the forest within minutes. 8 of them, all young, all radiating nervous aggression. "Arya Vale," the lead guard said. Not a question. "You're not welcome here." "This is my family's territory. I'm always welcome." She kept her voice level, non-threatening. I'm here to invoke formal hearing under pack law, right of bloodline challenge. There's no challenge. Alpha Marcus holds leadership through legal marriage. Legal marriage to someone who helped poison the previous Alpha's daughter for 10 years. I'd like to discuss that with the pack. Formally. In front of witnesses. She tilted her head. Unless Marcus is afraid of a fair hearing. The guards exchanged glances. The lead one spoke into a radio, modern technology, her father would have hated that, and had a brief, tense conversation. Finally, you can come to Pack Center, but any sign of weapons, any aggressive moves, and we put you down. Understood. They escorted her through territory that felt like home, and didn't. The trees were the same, the paths familiar, but something essential had changed. Or maybe she was the one who'd changed too much to fit anymore. Pack Center was a cleared area with the main lodge, a massive timber structure her grandfather had built, surrounded by smaller buildings, training grounds, storage, residential areas for wolves who lived communally. And everywhere wolves staring, some with hostility, some with confusion, some with something that might have been hope. Marcus waited on the lodge steps, Sarah beside him in a support brace for her broken wrist. Behind them, the Pack Council, 12 elders who advised the Alpha on major decisions. Arya stopped 20 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to avoid looking threatening. Arya Vale, Marcus said loudly, you stand accused of abandoning your pack, consorting with enemy Alphas and falsely claiming leadership. How do you answer? She'd prepared for this, rehearsed it until the words were automatic. I answer that I never abandoned this pack. I was poisoned by members of this pack, thrown from the border cliffs by my former mate and best friend, and left to die in the Thorn River. Her voice carried across the clearing. I survived. I recovered. And now I'm here to reclaim what was stolen from my family. Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. Marcus's expression stayed calm, but Arya could smell his fear. Those are serious accusations. Do you have proof? Medical records documenting 10 years of systematic poisoning. Testimony from neutral healers. Evidence of the specific poison mixture. She paused. And Sarah's own confession, witnessed by 30 Alphas at the territorial summit. More murmurs. Louder now. Sarah was acting alone, Marcus said quickly. A jealous friend who... Sarah was your co-conspirator, Arya cut him off. She administered the poison. You benefited from my weakness. And when the poison wasn't enough, you pushed me off that cliff personally. I did no such thing. Then submit to formal senting. Let the pack elders verify who's telling the truth. That stopped him. Because senting didn't lie. If he agreed and she was telling the truth, the elders would know. If he refused, he looked guilty. Marcus's jaw worked. This is a waste of time. Even if you were poisoned, which I dispute, that doesn't make you fit to lead. You're weak. You always have been. I was weak because you made me weak. Arya took a step forward. But I'm not weak anymore. So if you think I can't lead, prove it. Traditional challenge. Right here, right now. Winner takes the pack. The clearing went dead silent. Traditional challenges were brutal. No rules except survival. Fought in wolf form until one side submitted or died. Marcus looked trapped. If he accepted, he risked losing. If he refused, he confirmed he was afraid of her. You're not pack, he said finally. You've been living in Virex territory, taking orders from their alpha. You gave up your right to challenge when you left. I left because you tried to murder me. That doesn't void bloodline rights. Arya looked past Marcus to the Pack Council. Elders, I invoke ancient law. Bloodline claim supersedes marriage claim. My father led this pack. My mother after him. That leadership passes to me by right of birth. The eldest council member, a woman named Helena, who Arya vaguely remembered from childhood, stood slowly. The girl speaks truth, Helena said. Her voice was thin with age but carried authority. Bloodline claim is absolute. Unless... She looked at Marcus. Unless she's been formally banished. Has she? Marcus hesitated too long. No, he admitted. She hasn't. Then her claim stands. The pack must choose. Helena turned to address the gathered wolves. Arya Val claims leadership by bloodline right. Marcus Vale claims leadership by marriage and current tenure. Pack law allows for traditional challenge to settle the dispute. She looked between them. Do you both accept these terms? Arya felt her wolf surge forward eagerly. I accept. Marcus's face had gone pale. This is, you accept or you forfeit, Helena said flatly. Those are the only options. The silence stretched. Arya could see Marcus calculating, weighing odds, looking for an escape that didn't exist. Finally, I accept. The pack erupted in noise, excitement, fear, speculation. Guards cleared the center area, creating a rough circle. Pack members pressed close, wanting to see, wanting to witness. Arya stripped off her clothes, preparing to shift. Across the circle, Marcus was doing the same, and that's when Sarah moved. She lunged from behind Marcus, something small and dark in her good hand. Arya saw it coming, barely, twisted aside as the knife slashed past her ribs. Sarah stumbled, off balance from the missed strike. Before she could recover, Arya's hand shot out, catching her throat. Twice now, Arya said quietly. Twice you've tried to kill me with a knife. Maybe learn to use other weapons. She squeezed, not enough to kill, just enough to make breathing difficult. Sarah's eyes went wide with panic. Should I? Arya asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. She poisoned me for 10 years, helped throw me off a cliff, just tried to stab me in front of witnesses. Who would object if I ended this now? Silence. Nobody spoke. Arya looked around the circle, saw the watching wolves, saw the fear and calculation in their eyes, and realized she had a choice that mattered more than the challenge, more than Marcus, more than revenge. She released Sarah, let her collapse, choking to the ground. I'm not going to kill you, Arya said, because I'm not what you tried to make me. I'm not weak, but I'm not a murderer either. She looked at the pack. Leadership isn't about who can kill most efficiently. It's about who can protect people, build things, make hard choices that actually help instead of just consolidating power. She turned back to Marcus. So here's my offer. You submit now. Give up the Alpha claim. Leave Shadowpine territory with whatever loyalists still support you. She paused. Or we fight, and I promise you won't survive it. Your choice. Marcus stood there clearly torn, pride warring with survival instinct. Helena's voice cut through. Choose, Marcus Vale, but choose quickly. If I leave, Marcus said slowly, what guarantee do I have that you won't hunt me down later? You have my word that I'll let you go in peace. Live your life elsewhere. Start over. Arya's voice was flat. But if you ever threaten this pack again, if you ever come after me or mine, I will finish what we're starting here, permanently. She meant it, could feel the absolute certainty of it in her bones. Marcus must have felt it too, because slowly, deliberately, he tilted his head to the side. Submission. The pack exhaled collectively, some with relief, some with disappointment at being denied the violence. Helena stepped into the circle. Marcus Vale submits his claim. Arya Vale is recognized as Alpha by bloodline right and traditional law. She looked around the gathered wolves. Any who dispute this, speak now. Nobody spoke. Then it settled. Helena's ancient eyes fixed on Arya. Welcome home, Alpha. The word should have felt triumphant, should have been the victory Arya had been working toward for months. Instead, they felt heavy, like a weight settling onto her shoulders that she'd never fully be able to put down. She was Alpha now, not just in name but in reality, responsible for every wolf here, every family, every decision that would shape their future. And she was 23 years old, traumatized, still figuring out who she was without poison suppressing her. But she'd asked for this, fought for this, nearly died for this. So she straightened her spine, lifted her head, and faced her pack. Thank you, she said simply. I know I've been gone. I know I'm not the Alpha my father was, not yet. But I'm here now, and I'm going to spend every day proving I deserve this position. She looked at Marcus. You have until sunset to leave. Take whoever wants to go with you. I won't stop them. Marcus nodded stiffly. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the loss. Sarah was already being escorted away by guards. She'd face pack justice for the attack, probably exile at minimum. The crowd began to disperse. Some wolves approached Arya, offering congratulations or pledging loyalty. Others hung back, clearly uncertain. Thomas appeared at her shoulder. Your father's office is as he left it. We've kept it maintained, just in case. In case what? In case someone worthy came back to use it. He smiled slightly. Welcome home, Alpha. Arya spent the rest of the day meeting with pack members, hearing concerns, getting briefed on territory issues. Marcus had been a mediocre leader, not actively terrible, just indifferent. Let things slide that shouldn't have, focused on consolidating power instead of solving problems. It was going to take work to fix, months, maybe years of work. But looking around at her pack, her family, her responsibility, Arya felt something she hadn't felt since before the cliff. Purpose. She was home. She was Alpha. She was exactly what Marcus and Sarah had been terrified she'd become, and she was going to make damn sure their fear was justified. That evening, standing on the lodge steps watching the sun set over territory her ancestors had held for generations, Arya felt Kael's presence before she heard him. I'm supposed to tell you you're insane, he said, climbing the steps to stand beside her. Walking in alone like that. But it worked. So maybe you're not insane, just extremely lucky. I'll take it. Arya glanced at him. Thank you. For the backup at the border. For pulling me out of the river. For everything. You did the hard part yourself. I just made sure you survived long enough to do it. He was quiet for a moment. What happens now? Now I rebuild. Fix what Marcus broke. Prove to the pack that I can actually lead instead of just claim I can. She paused. And figure out who I am now, that I'm not just the girl who survived. You'll figure it out. You're stubborn enough. Arya laughed. It felt good. Natural. Like maybe she could actually do this. Will you stay? She asked. Help me get things organized? For a few days. Then I need to return to Virex territory. I've got my own pack to run. He looked at her seriously. But we're allies now, formally. You need help. You call. Thank you. They stood there as darkness fell, watching lights appear in windows across the pack center. Families settling in for the evening. Normal life continuing. Arya had spent months dreaming of this moment, standing here as Alpha, validated, powerful, victorious. The reality was messier than the dream, less triumphant, more complicated. But it was real, and it was hers. And for the first time since Marcus pushed her off that cliff, Arya felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. And for the first time since Marcus pushed her off that cliff, Arya felt like maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. The feeling lasted exactly 3 weeks. That's when the Blackwater Collective attacked. Arya was in the eastern sector reviewing reconstruction progress when the first alarm howled. Not the standard patrol warning, the emergency signal reserved for active invasion. She shifted mid-stride, her wolf form responding instantly now, and ran. The attack was coordinated and brutal. 50 wolves, maybe more, pouring through the northern border in organized waves. Not rogues. These were trained fighters wearing marks Arya didn't recognize. Black paint across their muzzles, symbols carved into their fur. The Collective. Stories about them circulated through every pack. Extremists who rejected modern pack law wanted to return to ancient ways where only the strongest survived and the weak were culled. They'd been quiet for years, consolidating power in the Badlands. Apparently they'd decided Shadowpine's leadership transition made them vulnerable. They were half right. Arya's pack was vulnerable, still fractured from Marcus's leadership, still adjusting to her authority, not fully unified. But they weren't helpless. She hit the first wave of attackers like a freight train, her wolf bigger and faster than they expected. Took down 2 before they could react, injured a third badly enough he retreated. Around her, Shadowpine wolves rallied. Some fought with the desperate violence of protecting home. Others hung back, uncertain whether to follow their new Alpha into what looked like a suicide battle. Arya didn't have time to convince them. She just kept fighting, trusting they'd either follow or they wouldn't. Most followed. The battle was chaos. Wolves tearing at each other in the darkness. Blood on snow, screams and howls mixing until Arya couldn't distinguish ally from enemy by sound alone. She fought on instinct and training, Kael's lessons coming back automatically. Don't overcommit, protect your throat, use their momentum against them. She'd just torn free from a grapple when she smelled it. Wrong, chemical, familiar, poison. The collective wolves were using poison-tipped weapons. Not enough to kill instantly, just enough to slow, weaken, make her pack vulnerable. Arya's vision tunneled. For a split second, she was back on that cliff, poison flooding her system, Marcus pushing her over the edge. Then rage burned through the paralysis, and she moved. She found the wolf carrying the poison reservoir, a lean female with vicious scars and dead eyes. Their eyes met across 20 feet of bloody ground. The female smiled and raised the reservoir like a toast. Arya charged. They collided mid-leap, both forms too entangled to use teeth effectively. They crashed into the frozen ground hard enough to crack ice, rolled, came up fighting. The female was faster, but Arya was stronger, and rage made her reckless in ways training never had. She got her jaws around the female's shoulder, bit down until bone cracked. The female shrieked and released the poison reservoir. It shattered on the rocks, contents spilling harmlessly into snow. Arya released her, stepped back. The female shifted to human form, blood pouring from the shoulder wound. "You're the dead girl," she rasped. "The one who survived the river." Not that dead, apparently. Should have stayed gone. The collective doesn't recognize weak leadership, doesn't accept alphas who claim power through politics instead of proving strength. She spat blood. "You're everything wrong with modern packs. And you're everything wrong with the old ways, strength without purpose, violence without reason." Arya shifted to human form as well, standing over her. "Your leadership structure is who can kill most efficiently. Mine is who can protect best. We're not the same." "No, we're not." The female's good hand moved, fast, pulling a knife from somewhere. Arya was faster, caught her wrist, twisted hard enough to disarm, pinned her to the ground. "Submit or die," Arya said quietly. "Those are your options." "I don't submit to cut." Arya's hand closed on her throat. Not squeezing yet, just present, just possible. "Let me rephrase. Submit now, leave my territory and live. Or keep fighting and prove you're exactly as stupid as I think you are." The female's eyes flickered. Fear, finally, breaking through the fanaticism. She tilted her head sideways. Submission. Arya released her, stood. Around them, the battle was ending. The collective wolves who weren't dead or too injured to move were retreating, dragging wounded with them. Shadowpine had held, barely. Arya shifted back to wolf form and howled, not triumph, but signal. Rally point. Regroup. Her pack responded, voices joining hers until the forest rang with their combined song. Claiming territory, asserting dominance, warning anyone listening that Shadowpine was not easy prey. The count came in over the next hour. 15 Shadowpine wolves seriously injured. 3 dead. 28 collective attackers killed or captured. The rest fled back across the northern border. They'd won. But the cost was brutal. Arya stood in the medical tent as Mara, who'd traveled from Virex territory to help, worked on the injured, watched wolves who'd fought for her get stitched back together, saw the pain in their faces, smelled their blood. This was leadership. Not the ceremony, not the political victory. This. Making decisions that got people hurt, asking wolves to risk death for territory and ideology and her authority. "You're spiraling," Kael said quietly behind her. He'd arrived with Mara, brought reinforcements as soon as he'd heard about the attack. "I can hear it from here. 3 dead. Because I took leadership. Because I made Shadowpine a target. 3 dead because extremists attacked. That's on them, not you." He moved beside her. "And if you weren't Alpha, if Marcus still led, he would have surrendered territory or gotten the whole pack killed trying to prove himself. You held. That matters." "Does it? To the families of the dead? Ask them." So she did. The first family, parents who'd lost their adult son in the fighting, met her with hollow eyes and grief so thick Arya could taste it. "I'm sorry," she said. "Your son died protecting the pack. That's my responsibility. My failure." The father looked at her for a long moment, then, "Marcus would have sent condolences through a messenger. Wouldn't have come himself. Wouldn't have admitted responsibility." He gripped Arya's shoulder. "My son died protecting home. Protecting family. That's an honor, not a failure. Don't take that from him by making it about your guilt." The words hit hard. shifted something in Arya's chest. She visited all three families. Heard similar responses: grief, yes, but also understanding. Pride that their people had fought for something that mattered. It didn't make the deaths acceptable, but it made them bearable. The interrogation of captured collective wolves revealed worse news. This wasn't an isolated attack. The collective had been building strength for months, targeting packs they saw as weak or corrupt. Shadowpine was just the beginning. They had plans to hit 3 more territories in the next month. And after that, a coordinated assault on the territorial summit grounds during the next gathering. Mass casualties. Total chaos. A message written in blood. Arya called an emergency Alpha Council, every pack leader within 2 territories. Used her new authority and Kael's backing to force attendance. They gathered in neutral territory 3 days later. 30 alphas, all dealing with their own problems, most resentful at being summoned. Arya stood before them and laid out what she'd learned. The collective isn't just raiding anymore. They're organized, armed, and planning something that'll affect every pack here. She detailed the interrogation results, the captured maps, the timeline they'd extracted. Silence. Then an alpha named Corvus, older traditional, had never hidden his disdain for Arya's convenient survival, spoke up. And we're supposed to believe intelligence from a brand new alpha who's been in power for 3 weeks? Intelligence that conveniently requires us all to rally behind her leadership? Others murmured agreement. Arya had expected this. You don't have to believe me. You can verify independently, send your own scouts, do your own interrogations. She looked around the room. But while you're debating whether I'm trustworthy, the collective is moving, and when they hit, they won't care about your skepticism. Then what do you propose? Another alpha asked. Female, middle-aged, practical. Joint defense, coordinated patrols, shared intelligence. We identify their staging grounds, hit them before they can organize the summit attack. You're talking about preemptive war. I'm talking about stopping extremists before they kill hundreds of wolves. Arya's voice stayed level. They attacked my territory. They'll attack yours. The only question is whether we face them divided or together. Corvus laughed. United under your leadership, I'm sure. Very convenient. Not my leadership. Joint command, rotating authority. I don't care who gives orders as long as we're coordinated. She looked at Kael. I'd actually suggest the Alpha King takes primary command. He's got the most experience with this kind of operation. Kael's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe approval. I can coordinate if the council agrees. The debate lasted 3 hours. Some alphas wanted immediate action. Others wanted more intelligence. A few refused to participate at all, citing territory commitments. But by the end, they had agreement. 22 packs committed to joint defense. Kael coordinating, scouts sharing information, a plan to locate and neutralize the collective's main base. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. After the council disbanded, Corvus approached Arya directly. That was clever, he said, giving command to Virex instead of claiming it yourself. It wasn't clever. It was practical. Kael's better qualified. Maybe. Or maybe you knew claiming command would make half the council refuse on principle. He studied her face. Your father used to do the same thing. Give up small victories to win larger ones. You knew my father? Served under him for 15 years before establishing my own pack. He was a good alpha, fair, strategic. Corvus paused. You look like your mother, but you think like him. That's unexpected. It was the closest thing to approval she'd gotten from the traditional alphas. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. This alliance is fragile. One wrong move and it shatters. He turned to leave, then paused. But for what it's worth, I'm glad you survived that river. Your father would be proud. The operation to find the collective base took 2 weeks. Scout teams from multiple packs worked in rotation, mapping movement patterns and supply lines. They lost 4 wolves to collective ambushes, nearly lost a 5th when a patrol ran into a trap. But slowly, piece by piece, they identified the location. A fortress built into the Badlands Canyon system. Defensible, isolated, stocked for long siege. And housing maybe 300 collective wolves. The attack plan was brutal, but necessary. Hit at dawn when defenses were weakest. 3 strike teams, 1 to breach the main entrance, 2 to block escape routes. priority on capturing leadership but prepared for heavy resistance. Arya led the Shadowpine contingent. 35 wolves, mix of veterans and younger fighters, all volunteers. They moved into position before sunrise, coordinating through runners since radio silence was essential. Kyle found her in the darkness before the attack. "Last chance to reconsider," he said quietly. "You don't have to be on the front line for this." "Yes, I do. My pack's fighting. I'm not leading from behind." "Your pack needs you alive. Dead heroes don't rebuild territories. And alphas who hide while their people fight don't earn respect." Arya checked her weapons. She'd learned to fight in human form as well now. Knives and tactics Kael had drilled into her. "I know the risks. I'm going anyway." Kael sighed. Stubborn. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "Sometimes it is." He gripped her shoulder briefly. "Don't die. I've invested too much time in keeping you alive to watch you waste it now." "I'll do my best." The attack began with coordinated silence. Strike teams moving in fast, taking out sentries before alarms could sound. They made it maybe 2 minutes before someone raised the alert. Then all hell broke loose. The collective had been ready, not for the specific attack, but ready in general. Defensive positions, fallback points, organized resistance. They fought like fanatics, because they were fanatics. Arya's team hit the eastern barracks, clearing rooms in brutal close combat. The fighting was worse than the Shadowpine defense. Tighter quarters, more lethal, no room for hesitation. She lost count of how many she fought. Just kept moving, kept following training, kept making sure her wolves had room to work. They were clearing the third level when she felt it. Wrong, different, power that made her wolf recoil instinctively. She followed the feeling to a central chamber, found 6 collective wolves standing in a circle around something that glowed wrong, sickly green light that hurt to look at directly. Curse work. Old magic that most packs had abandoned centuries ago because it corrupted everything it touched. And in the center of the circle, bound and unconscious, Kyle. Arya's vision went red. She didn't remember crossing the room. Just suddenly she was in the circle, tearing through collective wolves like they were made of paper. They tried to fight back, but rage made her faster, stronger, unstoppable. She killed 4 before the remaining 2 fled. Then she was at Kael's side, trying to break the bindings, feeling the curse energy trying to sink into her skin. "Don't!" Kael rasped. He was conscious, barely. "It's keyed to wolf genetics. Trying to force it will spread it to you." "Then what do I do?" "Get me to Mara. She can purge it, but I can't move on my own." Arya hauled him up, got his arm over her shoulders. He was heavy, dead weight from the curse, but she managed. They made it maybe 50 feet before the collective leader appeared. Taller than average, scarred heavily, eyes that reflected the curse light. She held a staff carved with symbols that made Arya's skin crawl. "The dead girl and the Alpha King," she said, voice like gravel. "Perfect." She raised the staff and the curse energy surged. Arya felt it hit, cold fire in her veins trying to latch onto her wolf and corrupt it from the inside. She stumbled, nearly dropped Kael. The leader smiled. "You can't fight this. It's older than your bloodlines, older than your precious pack laws. It's what we are under all the civilization you've forced on us." She moved closer. "Monsters. That's our truth, our nature. And I'm going to remind every pack what happens when you forget that." Arya's wolf was screaming, trying to reject the curse, failing. And somewhere in that screaming panic, she remembered something Mara had said months ago. "Your genetics are showing traits I've only read about in historical texts. Ancient alpha lines. Ancient meant powerful, but it also meant old. Older than curses, older than corruption, older than whatever this leader thought she understood about wolf nature." Arya stopped fighting the curse energy. Let it in instead, felt it try to latch onto her wolf, and felt her wolf devour it. Not reject, not purge. Consume. The curse energy fractured, broke apart, dissolved into raw power her body absorbed like water. Arya stood up straight, Kael still leaning on her, but now the curse wasn't draining her. The leader's smile faltered. "Impossible. That seems to be my thing." Arya's voice came out wrong, deeper, echoing with power that wasn't entirely her own. "You wanted to remind us what we are? Let me return the favor." She shifted. Not to her normal wolf form, to something else. something older that her bloodline had been suppressing for generations. She grew, kept growing, until she stood nearly 12 feet at the shoulder, white fur streaked with silver that seemed to glow from within, eyes pure molten gold. Ancient Alpha, primordial form. The thing legends were made from. The leader dropped her staff and ran. Arya let her go. Had more important things to worry about. She shifted back, hard, painful, like forcing herself into clothes that didn't quite fit anymore, and helped Kale out of the fortress. Mara took one look at him and started the purge process immediately. It took 3 hours, Kyle unconscious and convulsing while Mara worked, but eventually the curse broke. Around them, the fortress was being cleared. Most collective wolves had surrendered once their leadership fled. Those who kept fighting were put down. By sunset, it was over. 300 collective wolves captured or dead. The curse workshop destroyed, their supply caches seized, and the alliance had held. 22 packs working together, taking casualties but succeeding. Kale woke 2 days later in the medical tent. Arya was there, sleeping in a chair beside his bed because she'd refused to leave. "You look terrible," he said. She jerked awake. "You're alive." "Apparently, Mara says you absorbed a curse meant to corrupt bloodlines and just ate it?" He studied her face. "What exactly are you?" "Still figuring that out." Arya rubbed her eyes. "But whatever I am, it's strong enough. That's what matters. The strike teams are asking about you, wanting to know if you're all right." "I'm fine. You're the one who almost died." "I've almost died before. Occupational hazard." He sat up slowly, wincing. "But that form you took, that's not standard alpha genetics." "I know. Mara's running tests. Something about my bloodline being older than current strains, designed to combat corruption." She shrugged. "I don't understand all of it, but it worked, so I'm not complaining." The news spread fast. Within a week, every pack in 3 territories knew about the Shadowpine Alpha, who transformed into something out of ancient legends, consumed curse energy, and helped bring down the collective. Some were awed. Some were terrified. All were respectful. Arya returned home to find her pack changed. The wolves who'd been uncertain about her leadership now looked at her with something close to reverence. The ones who'd fought beside her treated her as one of them. Alpha, yes, but also pack. Family. She called a pack meeting that evening. Everyone gathered in the central clearing, hundreds of wolves in human and shifted form. Arya stood on the lodge steps and looked out at them. "The collective is broken," she said. "But the problems that created them aren't solved. Packs competing instead of cooperating. Territory disputes turning violent. Extremists filling the gaps weak leadership creates." She paused. "We can't fix everything, but we can fix ourselves. Make Shadowpine strong, not through fear or violence, but through actually taking care of each other." She detailed her plans. Better training, fair resource distribution, council meetings where every wolf could voice concerns, support systems for families, territory development that benefited everyone instead of just leadership. It wasn't revolutionary, just basic good governance. But compared to Marcus's indifferent rule, it felt like a new world. The pack voted to approve her initiatives, not unanimously, never unanimously, but by strong majority. Afterward, Thomas approached her. "Your father built this pack on similar principles," he said. "Fair treatment, pack before power. It's good to see that tradition continuing." "I'm not my father." "No, you're something else. Something we needed." He smiled. "Welcome home, Alpha. For real this time." That night, standing alone on the lodge steps, Arya thought about the journey that had brought her here. The cliff, the river, the poison burning out of her system, months of brutal training, the summit confrontation, the collective attack, every moment of pain and fear and fury that had forged her into something new. She wasn't the weak girl Marcus and Sarah had tried to kill. That person was gone, burned away in the purification fire. But she also wasn't the revenge-driven survivor who'd walked into the summit planning destruction. She was something else now, someone who'd taken every betrayal, every injury, every loss, and turned it into strength that actually mattered. Alpha. Not through violence or politics, but through proving she could protect her people when it counted. The girl who fell off that cliff had died in the river. The woman who climbed out was something the world had never seen before. and she was just getting started. Arya looked out over her territory, the forests her grandfather had claimed, the lodge her father had built, the pack her mother had loved, and felt something settle in her chest. Not peace. She'd probably never have complete peace. But purpose, belonging, the bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be. Behind her, the lodge doors opened, wolves emerging for evening patrol, families settling in, life continuing. Her pack, her responsibility, her future. Arya smiled and walked inside to join them. The story of the dead girl who came back wrong had ended. The story of the Alpha who rebuilt everything from ashes was just beginning, and she couldn't wait to see what came next.